This testimonial illustrates the possible consequences of working on oneself, which consists with the help of introspection in stripping ourselves of what we are not, our conditioning or limiting beliefs. When certain layers of personality have been removed, it seems that a space can open up to let something greater than ourselves into our lives, and this is one of the possible effects. My wife and I had decided to eat at the restaurant. Once seated, we fully enjoyed this moment of conviviality with all the joy that characterizes the tasting of a good meal. At the end of the lunch, as I headed to the cash register to pay the bill, something inside me pushed me to give the young man who had been our waiter a tip of 50 euros. It was almost the equivalent of the amount of the bill, which was 65 euros. I clearly remember saying to him, "This tip is for you. It's not to be put in a communal pot. It's to reward you for your excellent work. It's well deserved." As I leave the restaurant, I tell my wife that something has prompted me to give the waiter such a large amount of money, although I don't really know why. But my wife knows me and knows that sometimes I can be a surprising person, so she doesn't really formalize my gesture. This could be the end of the story, but it's not. About a quarter of an hour later, I am thinking about my gesture, which on the face of it makes no sense at all. Suddenly, I am overcome by an intense emotion, which I understand to be what the young man was going through at that time of his life. As I watch his life flash by, I am overwhelmed by a flood of sadness, doubt, anger, and feelings of injustice. And I realized that this young man had been through some dark times. Indeed, drugs, violence, delinquency, fears, and a lack of self-esteem had been his daily life for a large part of his life. I am driving at the wheel of my car, and at the same time I am crying with sadness, because I am overwhelmed by his own emotions and experiences. At that moment, I understood that he was at a turning point of his life, that he didn't know if he was going to finish his training or give up, but above all, if he was going to continue on his honest and stable path, because he was riddled by a self-doubt and lacked self-confidence. My interpretation is that something greater than myself used me to indicate to this young man that he was on the right track. I had been the one through whom encouragement to persevere had been given to him. I noticed that during this experience, surprise was my first emotion, and that my rationality was as if shattered by allowing myself to be carried along by this inner force, without any resistance on my part. It seems to me that I was useful. I could have had no explanation for what had just happened to me, and that wouldn't have been a problem, even if I had the feeling that I hadn't very reasonable when I left the restaurant. However, one of the characteristics of this type of experience, which I've already had in other forms, is that it's possible to access extremely precise explanatory information. You're given a very clear explanation of what's going on, sometimes in the moment, sometimes after the fact. To my mind, this example illustrates that by stripping away what we are not, we can sometimes be connected to something beyond ourselves for the benefit of all our humanity.